resent in PDF format, maybe. If you can check, please. Thank you so much.
I'd like to ask all of the speakers and panelists to put their lines on mute as we're starting the session.
Yes, we are about to start the webinar, so participants may join to the session. Thank you.
So I'd like to say greetings to everyone on the call. My name is Karina Larson, and I'm the Knowledge and Communications Manager for the Climate Technology Center and Network, or the CTCN. I'm pleased to welcome you today to this event where we will share emerging lessons from the first few months of the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, and also explore some best practices in fostering and scaling up of innovation in adaptation technologies. The AFCIA program, as you may know, was launched late last year by the Adaptation Fund in order to foster innovation in adaptation practices, especially in vulnerable countries. The CTCN, through its co-host UN Environment Program, together with the UNDP, were selected to administer the Accelerator program. And so I'd like to just briefly go over a bit of what the agenda will entail today. We'll start by hearing some opening remarks from institutional leaders regarding the Accelerator. And then my CTCN colleagues will provide an overview of AFCIA implementation and some of the lessons emerging, both from a global perspective, as well as from the LAC region specifically. And finally, we'll engage in a discussion on what enabling factors are helping to foster innovation in adaptation technologies. And so to kick things off, we'd like to play a video of comments from Mikko Olikainen, who is the manager of the Adaptation Fund. So I'd like to ask my colleague if he can play the video now.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, participants and partners. It's really a great pleasure to join this webinar on emerging lessons from the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, or AFCIA. The AFCIA was announced by the Adaptation Fund with its partners CTCN, UNEP, and UNDP at the COP25 conference in Madrid in December 2019 and was launched in November last year. AFCIA is an excellent complement to the Adaptation Fund's other work. As of April 2021, the Adaptation Fund has supported over 120 concrete projects covering over 100 countries with more than $830 million in support. The fund has been supporting innovation throughout its history by pioneering new finance models such as direct access and enhanced direct access. The fund has also provided services that help empower national institutions such as the fund's readiness program. The fund's innovation facility emerged from the fund's strategy aiming to accelerate, encourage, and enable innovation for effective long-term adaptation to climate change. It is aligned closely with the Paris Climate Agreement, which calls innovation critical for an effective global response to climate change. The facility further builds on the fund's core strengths and comparative advantage as a highly functioning and innovative fund that has been financing concrete adaptation projects in developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to climate change. The innovation facility offers small and large grants through three different windows. First, small grants through direct access modality, which makes available financing of up to $250,000 to national implementing entities accredited to the fund. So far, our board has approved 4 such innovation small grants for a total amount of about $1 million. For example, the Innovation Small Grant in Armenia is bringing an existing technology and concept that is online digital education to a new context of upskilling youth on climate adaptation in Armenia. In Chile, the grant is helping to develop urban points for water distribution that can function under a drought catastrophe and are easily replicable in other parts. Second, large grants for innovation is a new window which was approved at our most recent board meeting and which provides grants of up to $5 million to the fund's accredited implementing entities, including national, regional, and multilateral entities. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, AFCIA, which is the focus of this webinar, has been designed to push the envelope even more by opening new opportunities for communities, associations, businesses, young innovators, civil society, local governments, and others. AFCIA aims to test innovative adaptation practices and technologies that further foster and accelerate innovation in adaptation to help meet the enormity and speed of climate change in vulnerable communities, as well as compounding challenges of COVID-19, while generating an effective evidence base that can lead to scale-up opportunities and transformational change. On this note, I would like to wish you all a successful webinar and hope that through AFCIA, countries are further able to bridge adaptation gaps and mitigate the impacts of climate change on vulnerable communities and ecosystems through innovative and cross-cutting solutions. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
So now I would like to introduce Jessica Troney, who is the head of the UN Environment Programme's Climate Change Adaptation Unit. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina. Dear esteemed participants, it's my pleasure to offer opening words at this Lessons Learned webinar on behalf of UNEP. My name is Jessica Troney and I head up the Adaptation Unit in UNEP Nairobi. Just a few words about how we work on adaptation. UNEP's approach to adaptation is to promote nature as part of a mix of measures in a country's adaptation strategy. And we provide support to developing policy and planning frameworks that incorporate nature and ecosystem services for adaptation. UNEP to date has implemented over 50 projects on climate change adaptation at global, regional, and national levels, supporting 50 countries for projects of a grant value between $5 to $20 million per project. Where we would typically test and scale up adaptation technologies to meet climate change challenges. But these investments are a small percentage of the overall needs, and so the market for adaptation technologies is potentially very large indeed. In 2020 was, in addition to COVID-19, the year of intensifying climate impacts. Floods, droughts, and storms affected over 50 million people, while wildfires devastated forests and communities. These impacts will only worsen as climate change worsens. As UNEP's emissions gap report illustrated in 2020, we're not doing enough to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Based on Paris Agreement commitments provided in the National Determined Contributions, NDCs, the world is heading for at least a 3-degree temperature increase this century, which would bring widespread disruption and destruction without adaptation. These levels of climate change will need high levels of technology uptake for adaptation. The 5th edition of the UNEP Adaptation Gap Report, released in January 2021, finds that while we may be gathering pace on adaptation, we're still losing this vital race to adapt. The same report highlighted that adaptation is expected to cost between 140 billion and 300 billion annually by 2030, and between 280 billion and 500 billion annually by 2050. The only way to minimize costs, losses, and damages is to win the race to adapt. And so UNEP is proud to be in partnership with CTCN in this Technology Accelerator program. We've had one call for proposals and we're soon to close another. I would encourage all who have technology development and application ideas to apply. The application process is simple. Thank you very much for your attention and best of luck.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And last, I would like to introduce Moa Forstorp, who is the Vice Chair of the CTCN Advisory Board. Thank you for joining us, Moa.
Thank you very much, Karina, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me well. My name is Moa Forstorp. I'm from the Swedish Energy Agency, and I'm representing Sweden in the CTCN Advisory Board. And since 1 year back, I'm also co-chair together with Mr. Ping Chong from Ministry of Science and Technology in China. So the Climate Technology Center and Network is part of the technology mechanism of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And its mandate is to promote accelerated technology transfer at the request of developing countries, which will support countries to fulfill their Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals. The CTCN has served over 100 countries, providing targeted interventions that enable countries to make progress in their transition to climate resilient, low carbon economies. The CTCN delivers technical assistance through a unique global network of over 630 technology experts from academia, civil society, finance, the private sector, and research institutions, in close collaboration with its national focal points from over 160 countries worldwide. In 2020, the COVID pandemic drove the world into a global crisis of unprecedented reach and proportion. The pandemic served as a reminder of the world's fragilities in the face of health emergencies, disturbances to natural ecosystems, and climate change. 2020 has been a defining year for climate change action, although slightly interrupted by the pandemic. 5 years after the Paris Agreement was adopted, we saw that many decision makers from the government as well as the public and private sectors stepped up and committed to net zero emissions around mid-century, as well as enhancement of climate resilience at local and national levels. For the CTCN, 2020 was the second year of the technology framework of the Paris Agreement, providing a structure through which to align the mandates and activities of the UNFCCC bodies under the technology mechanism with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. In 2020, the CTCN also launched a new innovative program funded by the Adaptation Fund and announced at the COP25 in Madrid. In November 2020, UNEP, CTCN, and UNDP jointly launched the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, the AFCIA, offering respectively technical assistance and grant funding to developing countries. Until 2025, the CTCN, with support of UNEP, will implement 25 technical assistance projects for a value of up to $250,000 each to enhance climate resilience and adapt to climate change in developing countries. The program will provide support to test, evaluate, roll out, and scale up innovative adaptation practices, products, and technologies. Moreover, the program will facilitate knowledge sharing and exchange of best practices, and thus strengthening opportunities for South-South and triangular cooperation on innovation in adaptation among developing countries. As you may know, the first call for submission of applications to UNEP CTCN opened from November 2020 until end of January this year, and attracted great attention from countries in Asia Pacific, Africa, and Latin America and Caribbean regions. And through this webinar, participants will have an opportunity to know the status of the implementation of the AFCIA program to date and early lessons learned emerging from the first round of applications. Thank you very much, and back to you, Karina.
Thank you, Moa. And indeed, an important piece of the technology framework of the Paris Agreement is focused on innovation. And so the AFCIA program is really well aligned with the goals of the technology framework in that sense. So before we move on to the next part of our session, I'd just like to note that Please feel free to post any questions that you may have in the chat section, and we'll do our best to answer them there, or to answer them during the Q&A period that will come a little bit later in this session. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mr. Ho-Sik Chon, who is the CTCN specialist on adaptation for the Asia Pacific region. And he has also been very, very much involved in the implementation of the AFCIA program. So he's going to be sharing with us some of the initial lessons learned from a global perspective in terms of AFCIA collaboration. Please, Ho-Sik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina. Good morning and good afternoon, all the participants. This is Ho-Sik Chon, and I'm Adaptation Specialist for Asia and the Pacific region, working at the Climate Technology Center and Network. Before starting my presentation, I would like to say thanks all participants for their interest in the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator and their participation in today's webinar. In my presentation, I will start providing you with a brief introduction to the AFCIA. Then I will share the brief overview of the implementation of the AFCIA administered by UNEP CTCN so far. Lastly, I will present early lessons learned from the first round of the AFCIA call. I will start with a brief introduction to the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator. The Adaptation Fund launched a new $10 million program, Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, we call AFCIA, at COP25 in Madrid in 2019. And this program is expected to support innovation for effective long-term adaptation in developing countries. UNEP CTCN and UNDP have received $5 million each to administrate the AFCIA and offer technical assistance and grant funding, respectively, to support innovation in adaptation in developing countries. The objective of the UNEP CTCN program in the AFCIA is to support developing countries to test, evaluate, roll out, and scale up innovative adaptation practices, products, and technologies. Until 2025, the CTCN will implement 25 technical assistance projects up to $250,000 each to enhance climate resilience and adapt to climate change in developing countries. Moreover, knowledge sharing and exchange of the best practices will be facilitated through the program webpage and UNEP and CTCN communication channels. Now I will provide you with a brief overview of the implementation of UNEP CTCN program so far. In order to officially start the program, the virtual inception workshop was held together with UNEP on 28th October last year within the framework of fourth Global Sustainable Technology and Innovation Community Conference. Representatives from the UNFCCC, the Adaptation Fund, UNEP, and the CTCN provide opening remarks and overall information and application processes of the UNEP CTCN program were introduced to 186 participants. Virtual joint launch event was then organized together with the Adaptation Fund, UNEP, and UNDP on 18th November 2020. Following high-level speakers from the Adaptation Fund, UNDP, UNEP, CTCN, and the Global Commission on Adaptation and Youth and Indigenous Leader, UNEP CTCN and UNDP programs were introduced to 743 participants in total through 2 separate sessions. UNEP CTCN program was also introduced through a number of events such as UNFCCC Climate Dialogue 2020 and Youth Climate Innovation Lab and a webinar for Latin America and Caribbean coordinated by the CTCN. Social media, the CTCN newsletter, and Global Adaptation Network newsletter have been also used to promote the program, as well as the calls for application submission. The first call for application was opened from 18th November 2020 to 31st of January 2021. In order to promote the first call for applications, the CTCN directly reached out to the national focal points through the CTCN and the Adaptation Fund, as well as its core partners, including network members, consortium partners, and knowledge partners, etc. Moreover, various UNEP and CTCN communication channels and social media platforms were used to promote the first call for applications. As a result, much attention could be attracted from developing countries and potential applicants. We received 71 applications, we call technology concept in total, during the period of the first call for applications. After initial screening and completeness checking, 47 applications moved to the next stage of evaluation. From this slide and the next slide, I will share with you a short overview of the evaluated applications in the first round of call. As I mentioned in the previous slide, 47 applications were selected for evaluation, and they are submitted by 27 developing countries. Of these countries, 3 countries are in the LAC region, which include Bahamas, Dominica, and Honduras. And of 27 developing countries, about 48% are least developed countries, and about 11% are small island developing states. Of 47 applications, 18 applications came from the country in Asia Pacific, 3 from LAC region, and 26 applications coming from the country from Africa region. As you can see in the figure on the right, agriculture, rural development, and food security were major adaptation sector of concern in the applications. In evaluating 47 applications, 3 elements were considered to identify innovation in adaptation technology, and they include a new, existing, improved technology, a hard or soft technology, and scalable technology. By using evaluation criteria, the applications were evaluated and top scoring applications were selected. In the first round of call, considering the regional balance, 1 top scored applications was selected from LAC, and 2 applications each with top scoring was selected from Asia Pacific and Africa regions. Further information on the selected applications in LAC will be provided in the following session by Ms. Diana Ramos, CTCN Regional Manager for LAC. As the last part of my presentation, I will share overall early lessons learned from the first call for application. From the first call for applications, we have found that there is a large appetite and need for adaptation related technical assistance in developing countries. Developing countries, in particular LDCs and Cs, continue to need support to articulate their adaptation technology demands. Moreover, we have found that initiatives to improve capacity to identify and assess innovative adaptation practices, products, and technologies targeting LDCs and Cs need to be rolled out. Guidance on the application submission process also need to continue to be provided to the NDEs and designated authorities, as well as potential applicants in developing countries. Last but not least, we have understood that where applications are cross-sectoral, in nature, a combination of the adaptation and mitigation technologies should be considered and encouraged to generate transformative impact. I would like to inform you that you can now submit your application via the program page. The second call for application is now open until the end of April. If you want to know more about the program, including application submission processes, please visit the program webpage. Due to the limitation of my time, I could not present them, but I have included several presentation slides at the last part of my presentation to introduce where and how you can apply to the UNEP CTCN program. So if you are interested in, please find my presentation on the CTCN website after the webinar. So this is all my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Hosik. And now before we move to the next section, which is the deep dive section, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Diana Ramos, who is the CTCN Regional Manager for Latin America and the Caribbean. And Diana, we are hoping that you could share with us some of the trends that you've seen thus far from the LAC region in terms of the AFCIA program. Oh, I think we need just to unmute yourself briefly. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Karina. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for your participation. For us, it's very important having you here. So thank you for your time. I want to introduce myself. I am Diana Maria Ramos Perez. I am the Climate Technology Manager for Latin America and the Caribbean region from CTCN. Our office is located in the Mexico City. Maybe some of you already know me. If not, it's a pleasure to introduce myself and just to tell you that we are very available to continue talking with you about this second call from AFCIA in the LAC region office, also with my colleague Ramiro Salinas. Okay, I think we can go further. Ramiro is moving the slides. Thank you. This presentation is very short. I'm going to introduce what happened in the first call from AFCIA with the region. Initially, I'm going to explain which are the eligible countries. Then I'm going to explain what happened with the applications that we received. Then I'm going to explain key lessons learned from other regions, the applications from Asia Pacific and Africa. And finally, I'm going to explain which measures we have undertaken to procure a broader participation from the region. About the eligible countries, I think we can move to the table. This table explains what is the number of countries that are eligible for this initiative for AFCIA. In the first column, you see the classification of countries, the least developed countries, the small island developing countries also, both the countries that have both classification and other countries that are not classified in the previous classification. As you see, in total, we have 113 countries that are eligible for this program for AFCIA. And only in Latin American Caribbean region, we have 21. I think I'm afraid I don't see the last line of the table, but it has 21. And in the next column, you see which of these countries we already have a national designated entity. These are our focal points, entities that are receiving information about CTCN services and other key information about climate change transfer. This is a smaller number, but still is an interesting number. As you see in the last column, the names of the countries that are eligible from the region to apply to AFCIA. In total, it's an interesting number of countries that can apply. However, we can move to the next slide, please. In the first call, we only received three submissions. We can move further, thank you. Then exactly, thank you. Only three submissions from Bahamas, Honduras, and Dominica. I will tell you what happened with these 3 submissions. The one in Bahamas was selected was for developing a national framework of the standardization of styles and procedures for a climate smart street vendor throughout the Bahamas. In Honduras was for the development of a nature-based solutions to increase the resilience of rural mountain communities in protected natural areas affected by extreme weather events. And the last application was from Dominica, an integrated solarized solutions for the education sector, building the resilience of schools, energy, and water systems throughout addressing regulatory barriers, institutional capacity building, and local level skills development. I'm gonna to go in details on the first one, that was the one that we selected. So to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'm going to explain some key information, key arguments we found in this application that made the difference from other applications that were not selected not only in LAC, also in other regions. This proposal from Bahamas was interesting because they started with a very strong explanation of the barriers that they were facing and the situation that they wanted to improve. Some key arguments they explained in this case was the devastating hurricanes that they are suffering, the fact that 90% of the food is imported. These 2 situations are endanger their food security. And additionally, they also have another situation that is very problematic for them, is the proliferation of street side vendors out of the normal and unrecorded. This is causing some negative impacts, environmental and economic. Then they explain the objective of this proposal. The objective is to build resilience in the agricultural sector to improve food distribution, by extent, improve food security. Also, they explain that they are going to get some interesting and important social and environmental benefits. When they explained the proposal, the activities were very diverse. Just to give some examples, they included, for example, technologies assessment and prioritization of technologies for designing these smart street side vendor stalls. Also, a strong component of a stakeholders consultation. Included also a piloting of these smart infrastructure solutions, and also strategies to engage the private sector. And in general, the total result of all this is setting up a governance structure and validate a business model that is also important to assure the sustainability of the solution. The delivery of this initiative is a climate and environmental resilient approach for the introduction of improved technologies and infrastructure to increase the shelf life of products produced and provide access to the market for local farmers. We can go to the next slide, please. Why for us they are winning points? Mainly the previous one, please, is different than the this one. Winning points, thank you. Because firstly, the line of arguments was very clear, and at the end, we identified that the solution that they were proposing were closely related with innovative technologies, with a high probability of being replicable along the island. Also, we noticed that the barriers that they were trying to undertake were a difficult situation for them, because they had some measures that were not working well. And with this new approach, it means innovative approach, they were trying to overcome this situation, this barrier. So the line of arguments were very clear, related with the technologies, hard and soft technologies, and for this reason we saw these winning points in this application. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. And I want to explain the other proposals from Latin America also. They were very interesting proposals, for example, from Honduras. this proposal for Honduras, we decided to convert into a CTCN technical assistance, and we're going to go further with this application, but with our regular CTCN technical assistance. The situation is that when we were reading this proposal from Honduras, the identification of innovative technologies was not very clear. There were very important activities that are going to have a very positive impact in adaptation, but it's not clear how they're going to use innovative technologies and innovative approaches. So for this reason, we decided to move this request to the CTCN track. The proposal from Dominica, also with a very important impact in adaptation, the arguments were very clear, the importance of these actions for Dominica. However, we saw that this proposal belonged to another kind of support. This is more feasible, or the intention of the country is to apply in the future for the another finance climate fund, for the GCF funds. So there is a specific track for this kind of initiatives. There is a track, maybe you already know, is the Readiness GCF program that you can also apply to this program. So what we suggest to Dominica is to use this channel that is already working very well to participate in these other climate finance funds. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. Now I'm going to summarize some lessons learned in other regions. In other regions, successful applications were from Burundi, Chad, Nepal, Maldives. This is only a short list of these initiatives. I don't want to go in details, but I want to present in the next slide. If you please move to the next slide, which elements they have in common. Well, firstly, we can come back firstly to the next, to the previous slide, please. Thank you. Which sectors they were proposing? Mainly the two sectors that are proposing are water and agriculture, but it doesn't mean that they are the only ones that you can propose. There are also very important sectors that you also can propose innovative technologies, for example, in the management of coastal zones, and ground and superficial waters technologies, and many other possible sectors that you can also apply. In this case, the common factors in these proposals was that they are using innovative technologies, hard technologies for water management, and also for agriculture technologies. To the next slide, please. Thank you. And there are three elements that, if you read the description of AFCIA, are common elements when considering the innovation aspects of a proposal. The technology has to be new, existing, or improved, should be scalable, and can be hard or soft technology. I want to explain here what is a soft technology. It's mainly the capacity and processes involved in the use of technology, knowledge, and skills. So, and if you can involve both hard and soft technology, it's a strong plus. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Finally, we want to explain what we have done to make the participation of the region more higher, because currently, as you notice, we only have 3 applications. This is taking in consideration the lessons learned that my colleague Josica already identified. The idea is that we should work very hard to improve the capacity of the region, and also to provide guidance on the application to AFCIA. This event is part of these efforts, but also we have done in the past other events. For example, we developed a workshop in collaboration with the RCC, the UNFCCC RCC in St. George, also with the UNFCCC RCC in Panama. These 2 events were held in February, and also we're holding some bilateral meetings with countries. They have requested our assistance to their proposals, and we're working with them, and also with the collaboration of the Africas and Asia Pacific team. So just to tell you that we will have opened these channels to support you and to increase the possibility of having a higher participation of the region. This is my presentation. I think I am very open to solve your questions. However, this time is very short for having the answer questions and answers session. But in the next slide, you can see our emails. You are very invited to write me or to write my colleague Ramiro. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana. And indeed, there have been some questions that have been coming through in the question and answer, which we've been answering there. And we may have some time for additional questions a bit later on. But it was very interesting to hear about the project for the Bahamas, and also that some of the requests that maybe were not eligible for the AFCIA program were then channeled into either CTCN regular technical assistance, or guidance was given on other channels, such as the Green Climate Fund, that could be pursued. So now we're going to get into our discussion on the on innovative adaptation technologies, and really how to help to upscale those to really build enabling environments for these types of technologies and their development. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Gracia Lanza, who is the coordinator of Sustainable Economy, Environment, and Agribusiness Unit at the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center, otherwise known as CTCN. So Gracia is going to lead the discussion on these various dimensions, and I give a big welcome to you and to all of the panelists.
Thank you very much, Karina. I'm really pleased to be here and to facilitate this panel on opportunities for scaling up innovative adaptation technologies. I think it's a very interesting opportunity to learn about the different dimensions of innovation, adaptation technologies, and adaptation. We will explore and we learn different perspectives, technology, policy, financing, gender, through concrete and successful case studies. Today, as you could see in the agenda, we have 3 presentations. One is related with innovation, climate change adaptation, the regional view. Then we go to drones for agriculture from FAO, and last but not least, we go to nature-based solutions for road infrastructure adaptation in Haiti. So our first panelist is Dr. Marta Moneo. She has a degree in environmental sciences from the University of Alcalá de Henares in Madrid, and a master's degree in environmental planning from the International Center for Mediterranean Agriculture. She obtained her PhD in natural resource economics from the Polytechnic University of Madrid, focusing on adaptation to climate change in the water management sector. In the last 10 years, she has dedicated herself to research, political advice, and management of climate change adaptation projects, with experience in Latin America, Africa, and the South Pacific. She's currently a program officer for adaptation in the UN Environmental Regional Climate Change Team in Panama, focusing on ecosystem-based transformation in urban areas. So the structure of the panel is we will have a 10 minutes presentation, and at the end, we will have 15 to 20 minutes to open discussion. And now, without further ado, here is a special guest, Marta Moneo. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gracia. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to see former colleagues. I used to be part of the CTCN team before, so it's really good to be here with all of you today. I'm going to share my screen. Can you let me know if you're seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So I'm just going to make a brief introduction into this topic of innovation, climate change, adaptation. These are 3 terms or 3 subjects that are intimately related to each other. All of them require a look at the past, an analysis of the past, but with a look into the future that's a bit disruptive from the past. All of them require a look into the future that implies changes from business as usual and from what we have been seeing in the past. The future is very different, and as we have seen from the previous presentations, it's looking as we really need to make an effort to transform systems and the way we plan and the way we think about our relationship with nature and our relationship with climate in order to be more adapted and be more resilient to the changes projected for climate change. This is reflected in the first report of the Adaptation Global Commission. I guess you are probably familiar with it. It was released at the end of 2019, where they claim for 3 actual revolutions in terms of adaptation to climate change. The understanding revolution, meaning we need to understand better. We have the capacity now, and not for so long. Now we are able to look at the planet and to have images and to have a perception of changes at the global level that we have not had before. So it's really a time to make a revolution in understanding the reality and the relationships between the activities of human activities with nature and with the climate system. They also claim for a revolution in planning, and as we were saying before, we need to make changes, deep changes into how we plan human activity, how we plan development. It's not something that we have to leave just a drive, but we need to think about how we plan for the future and how we interact with the different sectors at the national level and even at the global level. And finally, and I think Jessica already mentioned a little bit in terms of finance, also think about a finance revolution. What are the costs of climate change? What are the needs for investment? What are the investment opportunities as well that are arising as new opportunities? And what are those investment benefits in terms of adaptation? And so just to give you some of the figures that were published in this report, we can see that they made an estimation on what would be the investment returns if we invest in adaptation today, in the future, focusing on 5 different sectors: strengthening early warning systems, which is the one that shows the highest investment return rate in the future, making new infrastructure resilient, improving dryland agriculture and crop production, protective mangroves, or even making water resources management more resilient. So there is a huge opportunity, not only in avoiding losses derived from climate change impacts, but to also generate positive economic benefits from the investment on adaptation, reducing risk not only in terms of the impacts of climate change, but reducing risk of investments themselves, increasing productivity, and even generating new innovation opportunities, new investment opportunities. So there is a new market also that can be developed in developing technologies and disrupting adaptation technologies. And of course, considering the social and environmental benefits produced by adaptation, especially if we're thinking about nature-based solutions. But when we're thinking about adaptation and innovation for adaptation, and I think Diana also mentioned this and in some previous presentations, we're not only thinking about hard technology, we're not only thinking about satellites, we're not only thinking about infrastructure or a very complex technology. We're also thinking about soft technology, because we need to generate the enabling conditions in the countries that also allow for the adoption and for the deployment, the effective deployment of those technologies. So when we're thinking about innovation for adaptation, again, we're not only thinking about technology related to water management, to agricultural techniques or resilient infrastructure, but we're also thinking about new ways of institutional arrangements, new ways of governance. We are seeing already that countries in the region, most of the countries in the region are developing their national adaptation plans, for example, and within those plans, countries are establishing new institutional and governance schemes within the countries to better plan development in line with the projections of climate change. It also implies an effort in enhancing the information and knowledge that is managed to develop policies, climate projections, risk assessments, cost-benefit analysis. We have heard in several occasions in these presentations the cost of adaptation or those benefits of investments, but we need to generate more evidence. It's possible, but there is still a lot of room for that in terms of also enhancing the dialogue with policymakers, where they have a very interesting focus on the cost of the different policies and the benefits that they would generate. Also in terms of communication, and we have here Karina, the leader of communication of CTCN. Communication is key to bring everyone on board. Adaptation and climate change action is not only a matter of government action, but it's a matter of everyone's action. So communication is also a key aspect. And building the technical capacities of key actors, understanding the capacity needs, developing trainings, tools that allow for actors to understand better and to understand better their role and their potential action. And finally, as we were mentioning also, the enabling condition, the inevitable enabling condition of finance. And when we talk about finance, we're not only talking about international funds and the vertical funds that are designed to support countries in their action to climate change, but we're thinking about how countries and governments start defining their own public budgets in a different way, integrating in their investment analysis these risk assessments and the climate projections, how we work with finance institutions also for them to change their climate assessment and their risk assessment when they make investments, and even with private sector. How does private sector also incorporate in their decision-making process and in their investment process this analysis of climate risk and the externalities of the work that they do. So just with this brief introduction into the concept of innovation for adaptation and some examples of what it could mean, innovation for adaptation, not only talking about high technology, I would like to leave the floor to the more specific examples that are going to be shared with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta, for the very interesting presentation and for your highlighting all the net benefits of investing in adaptation. You set the floor very nicely for our next presentation, who will be given by Mr. Jorge Rodriguez. He will be discussing about drones for agriculture. Mr. Jorge Rodriguez is the agroclimatic risk expert at FAO. He has extensive experience in addressing problems faced by agriculture by applying information and communication technologies. He was involved in the design of the disaster damage and loss assessment system in the agriculture sector of Colombia, which is the first in Colombia and Latin America for use at the national and territorial level. FAO has been key in highlighting the use of ICTs, the information and communication technologies for agriculture, which is highlighted through all the work that they have done on mobile technologies for agriculture and rural development from 2012, information and communication technologies for agriculture and rural development back in 2013. And so success stories on information and communication technologies for agriculture and rural development. FAO's e-agricultural strategy aims to promote successful, scalable, sustainable, and replicable ICT for agriculture solutions. So thank you, Mr. Gutierrez, for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure. Is the next slide, please? Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. From FAO, we have been advancing in a process of strengthening in the actions that propose innovative solutions for agriculture and food. We want to strengthen the links and challenges between the commitments against the Paris Agreement, as well as the Sendai goals and risk management towards the SDGs. Next, please. Agriculture has been affected by damages and losses in Latin America, as indicated by our studies in the face of different threatening events in the past decades. You can see crop and livestock, for example. Next, please. As you can see, floods, droughts, heat waves, and in general processes that generate this rupture of normal cycle has been affected by climate change in our agricultural systems. Next, please. This is how climate-smart agriculture approaches for comprehensive risk management and adaptation to climate change are presented. We have these three pillars: increase in a sustainable manner productivity and income growth in agriculture. Second one, support adaptation across the agriculture sector to expected climate change and build resilience, reduce where possible the greenhouse gas emission intensity of production systems. Next, please. Thank you. In the last year, FAO has been restructuring its framework in the face of innovation processes, articulating the agri-food systems transformation approach, including different dimensions that strengthen an adequate generation of innovative solutions in agriculture in the face of current challenges. Next, please. Then we prioritize 5 topics for this management. In our case, focusing in special projects, disaster for management, indeed, and technologies, practices, and process for adaptation. Next, please. Thank you. We have then a very special case for us. In Colombia, we develop a drone assessment for loss and damage. We generate an analysis that you can see that allows us to identify the risk for 18 main chains of agriculture in Colombia. Next, please. And we articulate this information generated with the system under construction for the damage and loss assessment for agricultural sector. There we include the development of initiatives and tools for different scales, including soft and hard technologies. Next, please. In 22, we carried out the first pilot for Colombia, inspired by work with damage and loss assessment by our colleagues in Philippines, where we evaluate the impact of floods that happen in banana farmers in a municipality called El Dorado in the Columbia Plains. Next, please. There are some images. Next, please. We use fixed wing drones to fly over and evaluate using Pix4D software and the identification of different types of indicators, crop affected area by the flood and cost of damage. This is an image of the flight of the drone near to the river. Next, please. This technology makes it possible to evaluate affected crops with a particularly good level of detail, quantify areas and tons of losses, as well as plan risk management processes in the municipality. Next, please. In the same way, new challenges are being opened, in our case for the generation of adaptation strategies in agriculture through the design in conjunction with the communities and solutions that combine the information generated through this technologies with local knowledge in the management of their crops. Next, please. The main goal is, of course, increase the resilience of livelihoods to threats and crises. Next, please. And the main challenges, cost reduction, script development, virtual storage and processing machines with the communities, capacity building, training in processing, open data, national and international learning networks, and visibility of initiative. This is my presentation for the panel. Thank you so much for invitation.
Thank you, Jorge, for sharing your experience. I think there are a lot of questions that we will try to answer at the end. Now we move on to our next panelist, who is Dr. Lili Ilieva from the Asesoramiento Ambiental Estratégico. Lili Ilieva holds a master's degree in environmental sciences, policy and management from the University of Manchester, has a PhD in science and management of climate change from the University of Venice. She has more than 8 years of experience in designing, managing, and evaluating projects, and in designing, managing, evaluating projects and consultancies in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe, related to integrated water resource management, risk reduction, ecosystem-based adaptation, agroforestry, and gender analysis. Asesoramiento Ambiental Estratégico is an environmental consultancy firm providing tailored advice to organizations, communities, governments, and the private sector interested in improving the environmental performance. Dr. Ilieva, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gracia, for the introduction, and good day to everyone, all the panelists and the participants. Yes, as mentioned, we are happy to share our experience on nature-based solutions for enhancing the resilience of roads infrastructure in Haiti. Next slide, please. Gracia already introduced AA and what we do, supporting different stakeholders in developing of adaptation and climate resilience strategies and low carbon development pathways. The project that we would like to present had the objective to provide or elaborate guidance document for the adoption of nature-based solutions to protect infrastructure assets. It was executed in consortium with TIPSA and AGRE with the financing by the World Bank. Next one, please. First, I wanted to share very briefly what is nature-based solutions and give the context for the next slides. So nature-based solutions, well, it is IUCN that pinned the term, and it refers to actions that protect or sustainably manage, restore natural and modified ecosystems, with the main objective that it's going to support and address different societal challenges and support the enhancement of, for example, resilience and adaptation to climate change, as we are using it in this specific example. Nature-based solutions can be used to complement, substitute, or safeguard traditional gray infrastructure, while it also delivers other core benefits, social and economic benefits in a longer term. So here we talk about solutions that don't necessarily work as a standalone solutions, but are integrated in other adaptation solutions in order to provide to have the highest potential and provide most benefits. Why choosing nature-based solutions? Well, one reason is because they have the potential to ensure the sustainability of infrastructure. Here an example would be the conservation or restoration of a forested area on uphills in order to reduce the rainfall runoff, stabilize the land, and in this way, in the particular case of road infrastructure, to minimize the risk from landslides and impacts on the road system. It protects from hazards or climate hazards. It is, as I mentioned, this is again integrated into the ensuring the sustainability of infrastructure, considering that at a longer term as well, the sustainability of infrastructure, as we know, requires high costs for maintenance. And through nature-based solutions, this maintenance cost can be reduced, as nature-based solutions have the potential to protect infrastructural assets. It secures access to basic services for livelihoods. Here an example, especially from the road infrastructure, would be, well, once we have a cut road system due to landslide, then it is very difficult for specific goods, whether it's food and other important services, to reach some very distant areas. And when we talk about islands, this is even more the case. Next slide, please. So nature-based solutions can be considered and implemented in different sectors. So it is not only for the infrastructure of road infrastructure. It was also mentioned by Marta Moneo earlier in the introduction, by Jorge, for agriculture. So nature-based solutions can have benefits or in protecting the housing sector or housing assets, for example, through the restoration of mangrove forests, which can protect coastal villages from coastal flooding. The energy sector is protecting or minimizing the impacts from soil sedimentation for example, hydroelectric plants. Once we have a nature-based solution as reforestation or conservation of forested areas in upland slopes. Water sector, we can look at forest landscape restoration, for example, which would retain water and support the better infiltration of water, thus supporting the supply of water in a watershed. And agricultural sector, well, an example would be agroforestry, in order to generate as much benefits for the agricultural production, but also some other social and economic co-benefits, as maybe some alternative income generation. And when we come to the transport sector, it is where our example comes with more details. Next, please. So what is the problem that we encountered, or that was needed to be addressed in Haiti? There are heavy rainfalls, flood and landslides, which are destroying the road system, making certain areas in the island inaccessible and resulting in costly repairs and maintenance of the road system. In order to understand better this context, we had to analyze what is the vulnerability of the road system, of the different classes of roads. What we did was to understand first what are the physical characteristics of the road system, and to define, depending on those characteristics combined with vulnerability analysis and climate change profile and projections, what would be the level of risk for the different classes of roads. We prepared on the left side of the screen, you can see a decision tree. So depending on different criteria, it was defined whether a certain road class is has high risk or low risk or medium risk to floods and landslides. You can see we also prepared maps demonstrating, visualizing all these results at the country level. And yes, you may see on the right side of the screen what are the criteria that we looked at in order to define whether a certain road is at high risk or low risk. So knowing this context, we could actually understand what are the specific needs and the specificity of the context in order to think about the solution. Next slide, please. So yes, what is the solution? Well, we, based on the context, we prepared or elaborated guidelines in order to integrate nature-based solutions in road rehabilitation to stabilize the infrastructure and to enhance its resilience to future shocks, as it is being projected by different climate scenarios. And as well, we prepared a catalog with nature-based solutions, which would be guiding the public services and public road building services in the country on how they can integrate nature-based solutions in their rehabilitation processes, but also in building possibly new roads. So yes, we categorized the roads as well on depending whether they're in the mountain areas, mountain and coastal or coastal roads, because of course the ecosystem in which those roads are located would determine what kind of nature-based solutions would be most appropriate for them. We also looked at bridges, as it seemed to be one of the key vulnerable assets in the country. And we prepared a catalog which was based on best practices around the world, providing information. So for each solution, we provided information, whether it's a solution for specifically for landslide or for floods, also for earthquakes, as this was required, although not a climate related risk, but was required by the local stakeholders as one of the risks that they are facing in the country. Then we, yes, we defined what is the solution and described it in details, providing also maintenance and operational guidelines for each solution. And then we looked at whether each solution corresponds to specific ecosystem, as mentioned, whether it's for more appropriate for mountain roads or for coastal roads, and what kind of or type of nature-based solution it is. I didn't mention in the beginning, but when we talk about nature-based solutions, we consider that they can be more oriented towards ecosystem-based solutions, or they can be also hybrid solutions, meaning that they are considered together and combined with grey infrastructure, especially to enhance its sustainability in the long run. Apart from these guidelines and the catalog, actually there were also pilot sites in order to demonstrate the nature-based solutions presented or included in the catalog. There were 3 pilot sites that were selected together with the local authorities and based on the assessment of the vulnerability. So we also wanted to have a look at pilot sites that would be from different in different ecosystems, from mountain or from coastal roads, and we prepared a design on what needs to be done in order to rehabilitate and enhance the resilience of those roads. One of those 3 pilot sites is this Zanklas, and 3 of the key recommended actions, well, 2 of them are more engineering oriented, construction of an embankment, implementation of a system of enrockment with a slope, but then we also integrated a mangrove revegetation, especially because it was a road at the coastal area, and in order to protect it from coastal inundation. Next slide, please. So why do we consider that nature-based solutions are innovative solutions? First, well, they address socioeconomic and ecological sustainability challenges simultaneously, which is often difficult to, there are always trade-offs, so it's difficult to find the equilibrium. They are considered cost-effective solutions compared to grey infrastructure, especially in the long run. They are adaptable to specific contexts. And here I wanted also to include that they kind of foster local governance models, thus having or kind of enhancing the local ownership of those solutions. So it is up to the local communities that will take care of the nature-based solutions and not necessarily waiting for the government to take care, as it is in the most cases of road infrastructure systems, for example. It integrates science, technology, and local knowledge. So actually the solutions that we provided in the solution catalog and in the pilot site, they integrated knowledge from the local communities regarding the specific vegetation types or species to consider and where it would be most appropriate to do revegetation. And it has the potential to foster transformation towards resilience, going from gray infrastructure to more green-gray, and hopefully in the near future to solidly gray infrastructure. Thank you. This is from us.
Thank you very much, Lily. We have several questions, and we have around 9 minutes left for discussion. I will ask the panelists if they can open their cameras. We have a couple of questions, open questions that I would like to hear from you. In the context that it's very nice to hear all your experience and concrete examples. And it will be very interesting for the audience to know from your perspective. I mean, Marta from the regional perspective, and Jorge and Lily on the ground experiences. What would you say? I mean, is how can the governments or the people that wants to put the innovation agenda forward? What are the main challenges? What can they do to overcome those barriers to put the innovation agenda forward? I mean, because you are living examples that innovation is needed. There are multiple sectors where innovation can be applied to increase resilience, but we are aware of the challenges. But what are your recommendations to overcome those barriers or challenges? Lily?
Maybe I would say from the experience we had, maybe first something that is more specific. The experience we've had in Haiti, and also other experiences we have had with IAA in kind of trying to mainstream ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions and innovations to this. A lot has to do and has been as a challenge, a bit limited capacity and understanding of what could be the potential benefits of, in this specific case, nature-based solutions, their innovative role in order to promote resilience to climate change. So it is always referred more as a problem for the Ministry of Environment, and it is more of a nature conservation and this side of this looked at with this lens and not necessarily looking beyond that this is nature conservation and looking what are the benefits for climate adaptation that can be provided. And I think there are a lot of examples that are demonstrating what could those benefits be, and in the long run, with regards to cost effectiveness, I think it is challenging for governments to get access to those experiences and the necessary capacity in order to integrate those solutions into whatever is already existing in their strategies and plans for climate adaptation and resilience building. So I would say the two aspects of more access to best practices and evidence and capacity and knowledge for that.
Okay. Marta?
Yeah, maybe also adding to what Lily just said, that I agree completely with. There's also, and as we were seeing in the beginning, there's also a need to understand better the risk, right? When we talk about climate change, we still talk about something that is so big that sometimes it's difficult to understand who has the potential and who has the capacity to do something about it. And when we're talking about innovation for adaptation, we need to look beyond the national governments as well. We need to look into integrating other actors in the discussion, because innovation is naturally not really the mandate of governments and ministries many times. And it's also very concentrated, as Lily was saying, still the action on climate change is still very concentrated or led only by ministries of environment in many countries. So there is a very, very important need, I think, to include other actors in the discussion, to understand what's the role that each of these actors can play, and not only talking about government, but also talking about a private sector, about civil society, about the local governments, so each one can understand better what's their potential, not only their responsibility, but their potential for action.
Thank you. And Jorge, how did the idea of the drones came alive? What was the role? Was it government-led? Was it coming from private sector? How did it started? And what are, in your opinion, key strategic alliances that have been make it feasible for this project to produce the first results in the pilot?
Thank you. Yes, it's a very interesting challenge for us. Joint work with the central government, for example, and regional authorities like Meta department in our pilot, for example, and stakeholders, because it's very important to link the local communities. This is the route maybe where the developments like our project carry out can have a greater impact and be projected as scalable in the future. The communities have a lot of local information that, in addition to the developments in innovation and in this case the drone technology, this combination will allow a good establishment of this kind of solution.
Thank you. We have some 2 more minutes for a question from the participants. Could you provide an example of how finance can act as a catalyst for change in terms of adaptation to climate change? If any of the panelists have a concrete example to share.
Sorry,
Marta, I noticed you opened
yeah.
a catalyst for change in terms of adaptation to climate change.
Yeah, we do have, for example, the very interesting example of the microfinance for ecosystem-based adaptation program that was implemented in several countries in the region. And I think that's a very, very interesting example of how can we bring into the equation a new actor, which are the microfinance institutions and the finance institutions, because it's clear for the amount of funding that is needed to channel for adaptation. And Jessica Troni was mentioning in the beginning, $140 to $300 billion. That's impossible to channel only through national governments and through grant schemes. You know, we need another actor on the game that has the capacity to establish procedures and understanding, and to establish a model that can work at a much lower and much close to the ground level, so that the actions on adaptation can be autonomously replicated and upscaled to the level that's actually necessary. So that's one example that could be interesting in that case.
Thank you. Lily, there's a question for you. If you can provide an example of how we can apply nature-based solutions to tackle climate risk in arid areas that are prone to drought. Maybe in like a complex questions to be answered in, I was, 5 seconds, maybe.
Thank you, Gracia. I was actually starting to type, but as you mentioned, yes, it's difficult to type it. Yes, actually here it would and it is what also Marta mentioned earlier. It would be important to understand what is the risk, the climate risk that is being that needs to be addressed. I imagine that for arid areas, it would be probably prolonged droughts, maybe, or it would be, yes, change in precipitation trends, where, yes, precipitation might be concentrated on very short time frames. In any case, well, then the objective of the nature-based solutions would be to ensure water security, whether this is going to be for use of agriculture or it's going to be for domestic use. And all the nature-based solutions that have to do with regulating hydrological ecosystem services, whether this is reforestation, landscape, forest landscape restoration, or even just the conservation and protection of certain protected areas as well, would have the potential to enhance those water generation ecosystem services, and in such a way to retain water and to allow for better infiltration of the water, of rainwater. Thus, in the case of agriculture, for example, it's going to, yes, to provide a more sustained access to water, even in drought, prolonged drought. But this is just a very an example just out on my mind. It would really depend, Lydia, I think, what exactly would you like to address with a nature-based solution, and where should be in order to have a more tailored design of this solution. I'm happy to,
Thank
to
you very
provide
much.
more information in a bilateral.
Yeah, all the information will be available online. So unfortunately, we just run out of time. 2 points or takeaways. We have to consider all the positive and net benefits that are the outcome when investing in adaptation. Marta mentioned not only economic, but avoiding losses, but also social and environmental benefits. Broaden the scope on the actors that need to be involved with the design of the projects. It's key. And yeah, with this, I will thank you all for your presentations. Very informative, very, very nice to see how the implementation process goes, and also the regional perspective. So thank you. And with this, we close the panel session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Gracia and all of the panelists for sharing these insights and really excellent examples with us today. And I'd like to just pass it back to Diana for making some closing remarks, if she'd like, before we close for the event today, and also to confirm that indeed we will post the presentations on the CTCN website following the event. So if any of you would like to have a closer look at some of the information, you'd be most welcome to do so. So Diana, would you like to make some final remarks?
Yes, thank you very much, Karina. Thank you very much, Gracia, also for moderating the panel, and the panelists also for your very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. I just want to highlight some key points, in particular related with the LAC response for the first call of AFCIA. Even though only 3 countries from the region have sent their application, I want to highlight that CTCN has attended 30 technical assistance in the region only in adaptation. Also, thanks for the presentation of our speakers in the panel. We saw very interesting examples of how innovative technologies are now working on the ground and are giving solutions, for example, for nature-based solutions and IT applications. And these initiatives are receiving support from international cooperation. The private sector also is participating there, but mainly from the local and national governments and communities, and the society is also supporting this kind of initiatives. So it's just to explain that there is a huge demand of technical assistance in the region for climate change adaptation actions. And also I want to give an invitation to everybody to ask the support of CTCN, and also using other channels, finance climate funds that also giving these opportunities like AFCIA and others to support our efforts in adaptation. So my last invitation is to write us and to ask a particular situation in your countries, and maybe we can find some channels to address these questions, and also to support you in an application for AFCIA on any other climate fund. Thank you very much for your participation. This is all for my side, and have a very lovely day.
Thank you, Diana. And just want to thank all of the speakers and participants today for joining us, and remind you that the call for AFCIA applications is now open until April 30th. So I really encourage you to consider making a submission. And if you have any questions, feel free, as Diana said, to get in touch with her or Ramiro, or you can contact us at just ctcn@un.org. And we'll be happy to discuss any ideas that you have with you. So once again, I thank everyone and hope you have a good day and all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Lily. Bye. Bye, Clara. Thank you, Osik.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Moa. Thanks a lot.
Bye.